Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of the Pepper Podcast. For those who are returning, welcome back. And if you are new, the Pepper Podcast covers a wide range of spicy events that occur in our daily lives. Two high school students tackle heated topics through discussion. I'm your host, Jay Mehta, and joining me is my co-host, Andy Batanaskanpan. And today's topic will be concerning social media and its impacts on mental and social development. According to the Child Mind Institute, smartphones were introduced in around 2007, and by 2015, fully 92% of teens and young adults owned a smartphone. The rise in depressive symptoms correlates with smartphone adoption during that period, even when matched year by year. So that really shows how it's like such an important correlation, and
Right.
how instead of there's a difference between like causation and correlation, which is very different, but like there's a definite trend in smartphone usage and depression rates among teens.
Yeah, I agree. And I can say from a firsthand experience that, especially after coming out of, the pandemic when we had to stay home, and that was kind of one of your only options besides, going for a walk. But, there's once you've done that like 40 times, it gets pretty repetitive. So you turn towards online social networking. And I think that, you know, social media, online presence, all of that can have good effects for people. However, there's also numerous adverse effects that are present. And, you hear that, oh, social media causes depression or it makes people unhappy. Like that's supported by the evidence, right? Like
Yeah.
literally supported by the evidence. It's just talked about a lot because it's so important to recognize that, it's that you have a problem. And I know even for me right now, I kind of use my phone a lot, but that's a problem that is rampant amongst most teens from
Yeah.
where I am. And so it's really hard to recognize that you have that problem of spending too much time on the phone, and it's hard to put it down
Yeah.
and to walk away from it because you're so dependent on it. It's muscle memory. You check it first thing in the morning sometimes, and it's just, it's really a toxic behavior when we're talking about mental health.
Yeah. And I feel like that ties back to, especially nowadays, how like using your phone has been so common, like become so commonplace and almost
Yeah.
necessary, especially in like high school, college, like just like even in like your younger stages, and even like people in like maybe like from the ages of even like 10, 12 now to around like 60, 65 are mainly use their phones or computers to get around and like send emails or things like that. But like using your phone is so convenient, and it's a convenience factor that really pushes the aspects behind it, because having like something very small that fits in your pocket that can call people, message people, email people, do everything in an instant is so easy and convenient that it's basically just become intertwined with our lives, our
Yeah.
daily lives.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to really put that down and kind of detoxify yourself, which is why it's such a big issue when you don't realize that, hey, I really am addicted. You kind of just like put it off as something
Right.
that, I'm not really paying attention to it. But
Yeah.
that's really what has been a driving factor. And like you said, with the pandemic, people had to occupy their time because of the
Right.
amount of time that they were given with the pandemic. Some people use that time to, do projects and, do fun things. But some
Right.
people just,
Right.
watch TikTok. And, I am one of those people. I went on social media a lot, and that
Yeah.
really occupies your time. And especially TikTok, which I'll talk about in a second. TikTok has, in the algorithm, and this algorithm is done through many, many different, pretty much all social medias, through YouTube,
Yeah.
uh, Facebook, Instagram, everything. They all use an algorithm to display information that's pertinent to you, so that you keep coming back for more. And there's been studies that has shown that like dopamine is released when you scroll on TikTok, which makes it addicting when you're younger, like when you're under the age of 25, because you're still developing your brain and your specifically your prefrontal cortex, which is in it's in charge of impulses, satisfaction, dopamine
Right.
control.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so TikTok and similar websites are rewiring children's brains to get self satisfaction a lot faster than normal, which causes the addicting effect. And so this addicting effect is so, bad that people, and even like people like older people really,
Yeah. Yeah.
like they're like, "Oh, why are you always on your phone?" And it's half and half, right? Because some people really need to use it. Like at times there's points where like I need to have my phone because I'm
Right.
using
Yes.
it
Yes.
for,
I agree.
strictly like business and to professional aspect. But there's things that I definitely use my phone on that I shouldn't be and that I'm too addicted on, which is definitely something like identification, like self-identification and self-awareness is something that's very important to
Yeah.
stopping addiction. But like once you're so caught up in that idea, it's very difficult for you to really get out of it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned TikTok and social media and its dopamine effects because when you're mindlessly scrolling, right?
Hmm.
Even like a study that was performed that studied like adults who are like 20 to 30 who just like passively use social media, right? So like they're not actually interacting, they're just like looking at pictures of their friends and like that's it said that they've said that they've seen a decline in satisfaction in where they are in life, like happiness wise. Because if we're talking about social media, if we're focusing on that right now, you see most of the time what you want to put forward on the internet is not the flaws that you have. It's mostly the good things, and so it's kind of that false image of that the false perception of happiness and prosperity that us on the other side of the poster we get. And so we compare ourselves to them, how they're doing in that one snapshot that they're providing to the internet. And it's really unhealthy, but it unfortunately is the case for most people. And I know, like during quarantine, I was on Instagram a lot because I usually use Instagram to contact my friends because it's just an easier outlet for me. So because like I have a different phone from most of my friends, so it it's kind of weird like that. So I use Instagram in that way, but I also found myself using Instagram in ways that kind of occupy my time to entertain myself, or that I used to, like look at Instagram, like stories of my friends or what they were doing, but then I'd also go back to like TikTok,
Hmm.
which I didn't really have TikTok at the time, but I watched it on YouTube. So YouTube, I would switch from educational videos to entertainment videos while also doing I did like virtual merit badges for Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
and I looking back now, I thought that they were really fun. It was a really good opportunity to expand my mindset and work to serve the community and environment because it was a lot of like outdoor stuff because there wasn't really much I could do with the people because of the COVID. And I think that it's like you said, it's a really important step for people to just recognize that they have a problem and accept that they have an addiction to their phone or to social media or to electronics in general because there's studies that show that it can be good,
Hmm.
right? we,
Yeah.
we see um we see like building online presences, and then there are super valuable networks
Yeah.
that evolve and then expand and intertwine with each other, which people those social networks are very important.
I agree.
And there's also entertainment and self-expression. Like entertainment can be good and bad. Too much entertainment while distracting you from things that you truly really do care about versus like a little bit of entertainment. There's a
Yeah.
difference between like moderation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And finally like exposing people to and interacting with current events and new ideas. Like I know that I probably wouldn't have known about um, the oil pipeline bursting in the rainforest if I wasn't on like TikTok or something,
Mhm.
or I wouldn't have known about a lot of the ways that the political system in the country is run if I didn't see it on social media or the internet,
Yeah.
and I didn't question that, and I
Yeah.
it really interested me in what politics was, which is why I do a lot of MUN and YIG,
Hmm.
so I'm on the United Nations and Youth in Government, and so I think that the internet and social media can have really good effects, but you just need to do it in moderation, which I know is very hard.
I think you touched upon some great points. As like I think moderation, especially anything, too much of anything is never a good thing, and that's
Right.
like a saying that's very important. Because and that really applies to social media, but social media is a lot more addictive, which because of
Hmm.
the prefrontal cortex and just the addiction aspect.
Right.
So it's a the amount that it takes to get you addicted is very it's a lot less and very subtle compared to other things. But I think you talked about like great points about how there are good things to it and how you don't like especially for like Instagram and things like that and WhatsApp, like
Yeah.
you don't have
Yeah.
to, first of all, for like WhatsApp, it's like Wi-Fi calling, so you can call people out of the United States or out of your country and you wouldn't have to pay for
Correct. Yeah.
having to pay for going out of your country.
For like the plan, yeah.
Yeah, which it gets pretty expensive actually. Um,
Yeah, it is.
I don't know the price now, but Wi-Fi calling enables pretty much has cut that out, and so it's free to call people outside of the country, which is great. And also, like for Instagram, you don't have to give people your number. All you have to do is just like search up their username, and you can communicate with them without giving like your like I guess your personal details, which I guess you can keep it more closely guarded. So people like that in the aspect where you can build social networks without revealing maybe too much about yourself.
Mhm.
And some like more statistics, like 12th graders in 2015 were going out less often than 8th graders did in 2009. Drug
Yeah,
drinking, illicit drug use, and car accidents are down.
yeah,
And like less than an hour of gaming a day may have like positive mental health effects. So I mean,
yeah,
it really is. There are positive impacts that social media has had, and it depends
right.
on like person to person. Like some people use social media for good, again like you said, like using it for news sources, and
Yeah,
also you talked about like entertainment. A small amount of entertainment or a moderate amount of entertainment is just merely for like detoxifying and stress relief, and that's what people have their own stress relief tools, and
mhm,
entertainment is more a common one for people, whether it be watching TV shows or movies or just enjoying things that provide you entertainment, like
right.
comedy shows and things like that. So
Yeah,
it's mainly merely like a mainly a stress relief than it
mhm,
is. But I mean, again, once you get addicted to it, addiction is definitely bad. And so I guess that like talks about my point about it being bad. Um, and you talked about like self esteem. You briefly went over it. So
yeah,
self esteem especially targets young women. And so another theory about like the
yeah,
increase in depression is the loss of self-esteem, typically in teenage girls, where they compare
mhm,
themselves negatively with artfully curated images of those who appear to be prettier, thinner, and more popular and richer. And so
yeah,
studies show that the average, young woman spends around average teenager spends around 5 hours on their phone. And they spend an hour a week trying to improve their selfies, which I thought was interesting because we've enabled a society where like it's very easy to get caught up in the idea of wanting to be perfect. Like seeking perfection
right,
is
right,
something that's very hard, because nobody's perfect, but when you see what's perfectly presented in front of you, and once you see, because you only see a picture or like a video, you only see a snapshot of what people are trying to portray. And so when you see that, and when people see that, they think that they're not you know good
right,
enough, and so seeking that perfection really gets people a lot more depressed than they should be, which
mhm,
lower self-confidence and lower self-esteem. And they're bombarded with their friends posting those perfect pictures of themselves, and they're
mm,
following celebrities and influencers who do photoshopping, and so it's very hard on their self-confidence.
right,
And I I guess I'll do like one more like data point. Like more than twice as many girls as boys said they had been cyberbullied in the last year, 22% versus 10%, and then more than twice as many girls as boys report being cyberbullied. And boys' depression increased 21% between 2012 and 2015, and girls increased by 50%. So there's a large disparity on the social media influence on like self-esteem and depression rates.
yeah. And I just wanted to add to some of your stats because a lot of it is very evidence-based and is it sets up the stage for very more important problems when it comes to addressing social media and the negatives that exist in that area.
Hmm.
So girls 15 to 19 years old who interact with social media diet plans are 40% more likely to gain an eating disorder according to ymca.org.
Mm.
And I think that you can see like the correlation between social media, the like perfection model that you see people posting, and self-esteem issues as you were talking about. And a lot of self-esteem issues stem from physical stuff, because I know for me personally, like a lot of it is physical and still is physical, but it also is like mental, or like am I acting the right way, am I fitting in right? But at the end of the day, it's you are who you are, and if other people don't like you, then you can't really do much about it. But if you're talking eating disorder stuff,
Hmm.
if we see like 50% more likely to get an eating disorder because of that, that's an alarming statistic because eating disorders, there's so many, and they're all incredibly toxic ways of trying to make yourself fit in a mold that you think is more perfect, even though the effects of that eating disorder, mental, physical, emotional, are a lot worse than the quick the quick goal that you're trying to achieve. And there are healthier ways to go about that, but I think social media definitely does play a really, really crucial role in that aspect.
Yeah, and something that I also like to talk about, you touched on great points, is something that's extremely important to me, which is sleep. And so, again,
Yes.
per the CMI, teens who spent 3 or more days on electronic devices were 28% more likely to get less than 7 hours of sleep, and teens who visited social media sites every day were 19% more likely not to get adequate sleep. And so sleep definitely has negative effects. I'm sure we all know that, on cognitive health, because lack of sleep can negatively affect teens' mood, ability to think, to react, to regulate their emotions, to learn, and to not get along with adults, or to get along with adults. So it's a vicious, here we go, perpetual cycle.
That's
You
a
know, so
cycle,
lack
yes.
lack of sleep affects mood, and depression can lead to lack of sleep. And so this perpetual cycle of lack of sleep, affecting increasing your depression, which influences your lack of sleep, so it's continuous. And a multiple studies have found that severe sleep debt is linked to suicidal ideation. So teens who don't sleep enough are more than twice as likely to report higher levels of depressive symptoms, which is 31% to 12%. And teens who sleep less than 7 hours a night are also 68% more likely to have at least one risk factor for suicide. And so this
Yeah.
was done. I mean, again, take the data with a grain of salt. Do more research if you're gonna do, I guess, like, be
Yeah,
interested in
yeah,
this topic.
I
But
agree.
those results are definitely alarming, considering sleep is such an important aspect of your day. Right, we're given 24
Right.
hours. It's been told that you should sleep for around a third of it, and the rest, you do your normal activities. But sleep is very important because it's when your brain flushes out unnecessary impurities. And for your body to regenerate itself and regain its amount of cognitive thinking, it needs to
Yeah.
remove all, like, extra unnecessary, like, almost like garbage, and excess waste. And so
Right.
once during sleep your body gets rid of that, and they found that out recently through like some lab imaging. And so why we need that is because, in order to, like I said, cognitive, like, think more, we need to remove all our excess waste. And when you're not really getting that because you're on your
Right.
phone, it's very difficult for you to think as much as you could when you're sleeping good. And
Right.
especially when you build sleep habits, it's very difficult for you to get out of them, because, like,
Mhm.
your circadian rhythm is very,
Right.
it's just,
It's so
it's
in
caught up.
sync with that.
Yeah, it's
That
so
yeah,
caught up in the thought of going to sleep at 2 a.m., waking up at 6 a.m., going to sleep in your second
yeah.
period, and then, continuing throughout your day. And so
Right.
studies have shown, a lack of sleep induces worse grades, and
Yeah.
it's a lot harder for you to
Yeah.
focus in class, and also
Right.
relates to more depression, like I said, and risk factors for suicide. So it's
Yes.
all very, very intertwined. Um, and it all comes back to, perfection. What you see on like a post is not really what's going on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Um, but and but like, still, people still think that, hey, why can't I be this good? Why can't I be better? When there's really a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And that's
Correct.
why, we have celebrities, um, that unfortunately commit suicide, and people always ask, like, oh, what, they had so much going for them, and they had a lot of money.
Yeah.
Why did they do it? And it's very difficult to touch upon that because you can't see what's going on,
Yeah.
um, inside somebody's head. And there's so many disorders that have caused, harm to people, and
Yeah.
it's very hard to really pinpoint. You may be super rich, right? But
Mhm.
if you're depressed and you are, like, suicidal, it's definitely very difficult for you to get out of that
Right.
thinking.
Right. 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 And I'm glad you talked about the sleep thing because this is a very important issue, especially for me because I'm the type of person like I don't get very much sleep per night, like less than average.
Oh, really?
I want to say around 6 hours or so,
Hmm.
6.5 on a good
That's
day.
that's pretty decent. I mean,
Yeah,
like pride
yeah,
myself in sleep. Like I cannot function without like 7 or 8 hours of sleep.
yeah. I'm saying 6.5 over like that's the max, but usually it's around 6 or 5.5 sometimes,
Hmm.
and that's like school nights. And I've done this year especially because there are a lot of personal things that have come in the way of. But like a lot of the time, I find myself having a buttload of homework.
Hmm.
However, like studying for tests or something, or just assignments in general. However, when I'm doing them, I have my phone here, right? So I'll be doing it 10 minutes, 15 minutes, take a break on my phone, 5, 10 minutes. That adds up a lot.
Yeah, the temptation is very high, right?
Right. The temptation just to look, check, make sure everybody is like everybody's not people aren't trying to contact me, or like there's just something that I forgot, or just like kind of rewarding myself for doing that work. It's kind of like instant gratification, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely struggle with that, and I'm trying my best to you know help myself and just focus on something. And recently I've been doing that more, and I've definitely been like shifting my sleep schedule, and I think that it's really good because a lot of people claim like, oh, they have so much stuff to do for school and extracurriculars that they don't have time to go to bed early or like at a good time. While that may be the case for a handful of people, for me, that I what I've realized looking back, especially at this like semester, because like last semester was I genuinely was very busy and I didn't really have much time to. But besides the point, this semester I have had a lot of work to do, but I could have easily saved a lot of time if I wasn't so distracted by my phone or by
Hmm.
a video
Yeah,
or anything else I was doing that wasn't productive, right?
yeah.
And I think that, sleep is very important because I've personally made a mental note and I've talked to my friends about it. Like, I'm not getting very much sleep on this night. And I didn't perform very well on this practice test or on this quiz, or I'm making these kind of stupid mistakes, like I'm not reading this right, or I misinterpreted this, that I myself, when I got more sleep, did the kind of same similar thing, but say the same similar problems, but I didn't get those little silly mistakes out because I was well rested and my mental state was very like sharp. And I think it's an important thing to recognize, like whenever you're doing your homework or if you have something to do that must be done and you want to allocate that time, just put your phone or any other distractions that could possibly kind of make your train of thought go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Put it like outside of the room,
As far away from
or
you as possible.
yeah, right, right. And I know it's sometimes hard because a lot of work is done online, but just it's that self-discipline
Yeah.
and consistency that we need to apply to get to that state. And I think that that is something that a lot of people that I know should try to learn.
I think that's great that you talked about that.
Thank you.
I've definitely had, cause like my phone, the way my desk is set up is like I have a stand where my phone is, and it's
Yeah.
right here in front of me. And
Mhm.
anytime like a message pops up or something pops up, I instantly like have to check it. And that's something like
Right,
I
right.
have a really bad habit of doing that, and it's so hard to get out of it that I've just developed an addiction and I really can't stop. And so like I said, like, and the great points that you taught about or talked about was that,
Yeah.
first self-awareness, and then trying to work on, like like lowering the amount of screen time that you have by either putting your phone away or practicing. Like people have like these tricks where you do like 30 minutes of studying and then 10 minutes of phone, or like the 60-10, 60-20 method. um
Yeah.
and but different things work for different people.
For
And
different people,
so
yes.
yeah, everybody's different. But
Yeah.
it's very hard for you to just like put your phone away. Like I often just sometimes like I do some work and I just see my phone and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's time to take a break. Okay,
Right, right.
only 3 TikToks, and I swipe, I swipe. Okay, this one doesn't count. I swipe. Okay, this one doesn't count. I swipe, and I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
keep
that's usually
going.
something I would do
30
as
minutes
well.
later, and I'm just like completely through them. And it's like, oh my god, what am I supposed to do? And I go back to doing it. And something that you talked about was like the lack of sleep and due to your phone. I feel
Yeah.
like I am sleeping less because of my phone, because I'm so
Yeah.
caught up. Because the amount of stuff that I have to do, right? The amount of homework I have, and the stress of a semester. And let me tie this back. Going back, right? A
Yeah.
main point of using your phone is a stress relief,
Hmm.
and especially when you are a lot more stressed, like this semester has been a lot more stressful considering
I
like the
agree.
workload is a lot more intense,
Yeah.
and with exams coming up and everything, it's very difficult for me to just like sit
Yes.
there and just take it
Yeah.
all. And so
Yeah.
I kind of like turned to my phone for kind of gratification, just so I can like feel better about myself. And so going on my phone, it only just makes me more depressed and
Yeah.
like more insecure, but also like I'm not really gaining anything out of it at the same
Hmm.
time, like mostly, for the most aspect. And I'm also feeling more socially isolated. And with like an NIH research study, it shows that young adults with high social media usage seem to feel more socially isolated than their counterparts with lower social media usage. And so it's really showing that like the more you use your social media accounts, the more you feel like separated from people, and
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
feel, as good as you normally would. And so it really ties back to just trying to distance yourself away. Some people like tend to, delete social media apps and, like take a break from them, which helps, you like you using your phone, and it helps you be a lot more productive. I used to have the saying where like I would not have any games on my phone because it's merely for productive like reasons. And the only game I have is Clash Royale, but that's different. So, um, but I try not to use my phone for games,
Yeah.
and I try to limit the amount of like usage that I have. Like anytime I like catch myself, I'm like, whoa, I need to stop. And it's the self discipline, which is what you're talking about. Realizing what you're doing and telling you that you need to stop is something that's very important in like
Right.
stopping. And so again, everybody's different, so it applies for everybody differently. But
Hmm.
just trying to limit the amount of time that you're spending on a screen is also very important.
Right. And I think that's a great point that you brought up, what you were touching on about it depends person to person, because I think that it's a very flexible situation when it comes to trying to balance phone and work or
Yeah.
phone and studying, et cetera, et cetera. And, some people, like you said, could do 60-10 or 45. And it just really does depend. You know yourself best,
Yeah.
right? And if you find yourself doing away one of the things that you were doing, say you were doing 40-10, right? But you found yourself going to bed like an hour later, but you wanted to get that hour because you wanted to sleep a little more,
Hmm.
then shift it. Do 50-10 or
Yeah.
do 60-10
Yeah.
or 60-15, you know? And it's very flexible, and that's what I like because you get to experiment with that. But once you're, in that zone, then it will be a lot easier because it'll be really hard that the temptation to get your phone and just scroll or
Yeah.
just to look up something
And what
is very, very hard.
and what happens is you get in routine, right? So like when I
Right.
get home, I like sit in my bed for like 30 minutes to an hour, and then I like scrolling on my phone, and then I do
Yeah.
some work. And sometimes it gets longer than an hour, and sometimes it's shorter than an hour. And so I've gone into the habit of just doing that, where like it's hard to really break that habit. And so maybe just like a solution would be to maybe like when you get home, try to do all your work first, and then move
Yeah.
into going on your phone. And so you
Yeah.
can be more aware of your time and setting like timers and limits on the amount, because I know iPhone has that, where you
Yeah.
can set the amount, like the limit on how long you're spending on an app. That can
Yeah.
also help, but also identifying like what you're using it for. And so
Yeah.
like YouTube is viewed widely like by teens as like a positive force because there's so much information that you can learn from, because there's just so much that you can learn. I mean, it depends on what you're using it for. Like they have education to just mere like just entertainment, but teens report like Snapchat, Facebook, and Twitter and Instagram have increased feelings of anxiety because it's merely just the perfectionist image. So
Right.
while and you have to figure out what you're using the apps for. Like personally, I have Snapchat and I hate myself for using it because it's just pointless, right? But I
Yeah.
can't delete it because I'm in groups for
Right.
like
Or
my
like social, it's
school,
like
right?
social networking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly reminded of it, and it's very difficult for me to just get rid of it altogether. So I've just stuck with it almost, and I just get like the more you use it, the more you get addicted. And so limiting the amount that you're spending on these social media apps can help. Limiting the amount of, I guess, like content that you see, and make sure that
Yeah,
you're using it for the right content, because some can be very helpful and it's very
I agree.
collaborative.
Yeah,
Like YouTube, you can learn a lot from. They have like topics on everything, so
yeah,
you can learn from YouTube. Sometimes I watch like chemistry videos when I'm confused, so like that helps. But like using it for a bad aspect is not good, of course.
yeah,
And just kind of limiting the amount that you spend um on time,
yeah.
and trying to go out and like spend time with people like face to face and with
Right,
your
right,
friends is also
right,
something, because you regain your social interaction, and your like, I guess, like the amount of emotion, like social emotion, because we've lost that with um the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, we lost a lot of the way that we should interact with people socially, because we didn't interact with people as much. And so once like you got back, I mean, we've learned from that and we've gone better at it, but just trying to talk with people more could maybe increase the amount of social interaction, and maybe hopefully like lower depression rates and anxiety rates. Just
right.
talking with people can always help, because you don't know what's going on in people's heads.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that, with like stimulating more in real life conversations because it does actually make a much more meaningful impact and stronger bond between friends and family like that. And trying to actively work towards decreasing your dependence on phones and changing things up in your routine to see how it goes and accommodating your life or
Hmm.
you accommodating how you use your phone to your current life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying.
And one final thing, please, 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 if you're listening, please get more sleep. More sleep is
Yeah.
always good, right?
Yeah.
I
I could
cannot
definitely use
personally, I cannot personally function without like 8 hours of sleep. Recently, I've cut that down to like 7, and I feel groggy. I know it sounds like,
it.
oh my god, the end of the
Yeah.
world, but like setting good sleep habits is something that's so important, because that's what sets you up for a lot of like good things. And
Right, yeah.
when you have good sleep habits, you're able to do a lot more, and your brain can function a lot better than when you're tired constantly. And you're going to
Yep.
pay attention more in class, you're going to understand more, you're going to learn more, and you're going to overall
You're gonna
feel
grade as
happier,
well.
right? And
Yeah,
and like depression rates decrease with the more sleep you get. So get
right.
some more sleep, try to cut some of your phone time, and set like a sleep timer or something to where you can sleep at an earlier time, and go to sleep and get that extra hour of sleep, just so that you
I
can
agree.
feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Okay. And with that, our discussion comes to an end. We thank you for listening and hope you'll stay tuned for future episodes. Don't forget to follow the Pepper Podcast on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and our new platform, Google Podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.